Hello again, weary friend. Let us sit a while and chat, shall we? We have talked about building characters, yes, but what about the worlds they move about in? The places they travel to and the things they see, the saturated soil and searing pans of desert sand. To articulate my points about the world around characters, I want to talk about Vermis, a project created by Plastaboo depicting a game and world which no longer exist. Now, where to begin? Vermis is one of the bleaker dark fantasy worlds that I have come across. It is melancholic, depressing, cruel, and utterly bleak. But more than anything, I think the world itself eats away at those who live within it, something that even the gods themselves are not immune to. Much of the characters fall upon an alignment chart of sorts: good and evil, light and dark. However, the exact meaning of good and evil is somewhat vague. There's no point of order and chaos, destiny, or chance either, merely the light or the dark. Now, what I believe this is getting at is the function of purpose and identity. Those who fall within the light often have stronger purpose, stronger identities, stronger senses of selves. They have a purpose for continuing, a reason to exist and resist the infinite, pervasive misery of life. The infant seeker hunting for vanished offspring, the princess's nail holding fast to their oaths. Their purpose and will gives them identity and a sense of self. They have a light in the darkness and can resist it. It guides them. On the other hand, you have the evil, the dark. These are people for whom the world has lost its color, its meaning, its definition. The waste of life commits all sin and is reviled for it. The rat man hides in the most fetid places of the world. The parasite mage adopts the lives of those it deems fit, stealing their identities and personalities for its own. They have given themselves up to reality. They seek no identity, no foundation, no guiding light. They are willing to wander in the dark for an eternity without anything, slowly dissolving into the shadows, forgetting what they were, becoming one with something else. It's a really interesting set of foundations for the world to work on, especially when the grand vistas and hidden tombs of Vermis are so filled with infinite amounts of misery. This world eats you. Slowly, bit by bit, monsters and madness and loss. What characters are found are often at the end of their wills. You see the moments where they lose definition and are swallowed by the dark. Though there are some, like the Goblin Knight, who yet live on, clinging to their last figments of duty in order to ignite themselves in the infinite dark. It may yet burn them to ash, but at least they died knowing what they were and where they stood. The dead walk in madness and insanity. Witches fly through the night seeking flesh and spitting curses. Malformed monsters dwell in the most hexed of places. The kingdoms and gods have fled. There is no winning against the foundational laws of the universe. And indeed, this world eats not only you and I and monsters, but the very gods themselves. The endless wars and hate between the murderer Ghylak and the enlightened oracle Marco. The thing I find fascinating about this in terms of the creation of the world is not in the feud itself, but in the approach to it. Marco cursed Ghylak for something. What precisely that was, I do not know, but that curse destroyed his head. In retaliation, Ghylak's followers destroyed Marco's own, leaving a decapitated face which yet spoke prophecy. But what happened to Ghylak? It was said that a woman cut her own head from her shoulders to give it to the Red God so that he may yet live. If that isn't an act of terrifying devotion, then I don't know what is. A supreme example of faith for one's own god, the ultimate sacrifice in some regard. Ghylak's followers yet roam the earth, even now in these days of dying twilight, offering bones and flesh to their red limbless serpent master, wandering bone hunters in the farthest reaches of the world. Ghylak, the sinner, is yet the most followed god who exists in this decaying place. His worshippers roaming, hunting in search of something, offering blood and bone and skin for something. 'Tis a faith unlike any other. There are no churches or places of dark meditation for these. They hold communion in more baser ways. But I think what is so interesting about that is how Ghylak is depicted. A limbless worm emerging from a torso, decapitated and then sporting the head of one of its own followers. You see, Ghylak gave up his body, his limbs, his very face, all things that define him for survival. He is a god who was wounded by a rival, yes, but he is also one who became debased and lesser in order to survive. And so his worshippers do the same, offering him the basest of materials in order to prove their faith. And what is more base than life itself and the ingredients it is bound within? On the other side of the spectrum is Marco, the Oracle, and Dorvis, the Truth. Ironically, these two are the most heavily veiled in secrecy and mystery, so much so that I cannot yet say which the enlightened follow. Perhaps both, perhaps neither. The enlightened are a religious group that lock themselves away from the world, going inward, seeking knowledge and truth. They wrap themselves in sleep and chrysalis, and when they emerge, they become something different. Some fall to madness and become flesh eaters, while others ascend. Their faces break open, and a screaming light spills forth. As they yet evolve further, they become something further, bundles of shrieking nerves or faces scorched by distant light. Their pursuit of enlightenment and truth burns them, and yet they cling to it, even through madness and torture and deformity, because the alternative is to be subsumed by the dark and become nothing. Ironically, it is this pursuit of light which drives them to yet further devilry. Enlightenment, debasement, follow a light and wander alone for endless eons, or fall into warm shadows and never fear to be lonely again. There are a lot of frightening things in Vermis. It is a place where the world and characters are inseparable. You cannot draw a character out of the world, otherwise they would simply not exist. They would lose their function, foundation, identity. The world pervades their lives and pulls at them for good or evil. However, through all of that and everything we've talked about, all the world building, all the horror, all the misery, all the light and the dark, there is one thing which terrifies me more than anything else. An example of true horror. And that thing is Ketereth, god of wrath. Look at the other gods you see. Each have faces, or heads, but none have visible eyes, save perhaps for Dorvis. All of them, except for Ketereth, who lacks a head and face, those classical symbols of identity. But where he lacks those, he makes up for them in his eyes. Now, what frightens me here is that they are aware, conscious, staring out at something no one and nothing else can see. Dorvis may have eyes, but they offer a truth beyond human understanding. They are alien. But Ketereth, those eyes see. Those eyes understand you. Those eyes want to bless you. It is consciousness without identity, eyes without a body. A god who can give you nothing but the most exquisite agony you can imagine. There once was a queen, let me tell you, a queen who bore a son. Strong and healthy was he, full of life and vigor. And yet the queen doth become ill, with a rash of white hives. And yet she bore a second, under the searing sky. The second-born son lacked all that defined the first, weak, pathetic, diseased. What purpose was there for the second prince who lacked anything at all? The second prince stole into his brother's room on the night of his coronation and attempted to murder his sibling-turned-king. But he was weak, and so, at a whim of fate and accident, the covetous younger prince was killed. But I suppose it must be said that there was one thing the second prince had in putrefying abundance. Rage, rage, enough rage to rot the soul and burn it all away. Ketereth hates, Ketereth sees, Ketereth understands. Live again, you vengeful soul. Live again, you with my accursed flesh. Live again and take up this royal sword, only worthy of being wielded by a king. The vengeful soul is a boy, not some beast or monster, but a boy, a prince who was born with a fate he could never escape. Later, we find that the vengeful soul has abandoned his old flesh to become the most twisted of kings. A personal kingdom of wrath and putrefaction, a personal hell, a suffering eternity beyond words. But hey, at least he became a king. A sting from one of the king's red bastards inflicts Ketereth's white hives, so the cycle might begin anew, an eternity of wrath and putrefaction. Perhaps, hear me, perhaps in 1,000 years or more we might see a princess come wandering in the amnesiac sands, laughing in an autumn-colored world, for she does not yet know its bleakness. Maybe she might come across an old ruin half buried in this dying desert. Curiosity will compel her, for she knows the evil not, and perhaps, hiding there amidst the sands, a little red bastard might sting her on her little thumb on her left hand. A blessing of white hives, a fate worse than any death. A little princess who feels true wrath for the first time at the unjustness of a world gone completely insane. Or perhaps never gone, perhaps always was. The blessings of Ketereth are simple. He gives you white hives, which eat away everything you are, in exchange for rage and will. There is nothing more awful than a god like that who gives suffering and pain in untold quantities and nothing else besides. A god without identity save for a moldering mound of hive flesh and squirming insects and a mass of incoherent hate. But a god that knows you and sees. The world dictated the prince's life. Yes, he made choices, but those were choices that only existed because of the nature of the world itself. The world of Vermis reaches inside its characters and twists them, whispers and lies, misdirects, then strikes when they are at their weakest. It is a world of unrelenting misery and supreme terror. Which is why, then, it is such an important choice when a character either becomes subsumed by the world or chooses to light a fire in the dark, no matter what sees it. These are themes and events that could not exist if the characters existed in a vacuum, no matter how good they are. The world is there to push them further, bring out their nightmares and dreams, and to see what they are really made of. The histories of Vermis are vague and mottled with forgotten things, but that is what makes it feel real in many ways. All of that is what makes Vermis feel like something really special. It is a world unlike any other, a confusing, scary, nightmarish place, but I think there is a lot to be drawn from that. This world is a bleak place, often. We live in a time where definitions have slowly been eroded and putrefied. What do people cling to in a world losing definition? Do they fall into debasement and crude desires, cling to glories long since past, kind cruelties beyond imagination, madness or enlightenment, blood, gold, and steel? Do ye hold communion with things that will turn your body to pale, moldering disease and ignite your spirit to burn everyone around you? Or do you hold true to your oaths, even if your entire world and kingdom crumble around you? Do you follow your path to plant new trees and build a new home, even if wrathful fire spitters turned your last one to ash? Might you find identity again, even if the whole world longs to twist it against you and smash apart your face and cut off your head? At the end of the day, my friend, it is a choice. Your choice. And it's one you have to make. Sometimes I wished we didn't have to make it, but this life is not one in which we are given the luxury of not choosing. You may choose, or the world will yet choose for you. What will you decide, my friend, Either way, make the choice with conviction. Tick-tock, mi amigo. Our time is at its end. Take care where you wander, my lost, lonesome friend. I'll see you when I see you. All right. Hey, people. Yeah, do the thing. Likey, subscribey. Next video, probably going to do antagonists, I think. Another character video. Yep, that sounds about right. Like, subscribe, do the thing. You know the thing. See ya.